Hello and good morning to everyone. We are excited to begin the third and final day of our Pre-Hurricane Conference 2021. As some of you may know, my name is Ria Pear and I am the Disaster Preparedness Coordinator for the IFRC's Port of Spain Country Cluster Delegation with responsibility for the Dutch and English-speaking Caribbean. And it has been my pleasure to introduce many of our esteemed panelists throughout this conference. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes as usual. Just a reminder to you that you may choose your language of choice in our interpretation box at the bottom for Spanish, English, or French. As well, feel free to use our chat and Q&A functions throughout today's session. This morning, we are joined by an esteemed panel of Red Cross partners who come from the private sector and are here to share experiences surrounding strategic alliances between the private sector and national societies of the Red Cross. Here with us again today is Mr. Ariel Kestens, who is the head of the country cluster delegation for the Dutch and English-speaking Caribbean, based in Port of Spain, Trinidad. He will moderate this panel. Thank you so much for being here with us again, Ariel, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Rhea, for your kind introduction. To my esteemed colleagues, partners, panel guests, and participants across the world, a pleasant day to you all. It is my privilege to have the opportunity to moderate this first session of today, strategic alliances between the private sector and Red Cross societies. As a moderator, even has been mentioned by Rhea, I would like to remind you to pose your questions in the chat box in the Zoom, and of course, choose one of the channels that we have for interpretation. We have interpretation in English, French, and Spanish today. There is no question that we currently live in a period of extraordinary humanitarian challenges. These challenges continue to grow at an unprecedented rate on a global level. Unfortunately, the growing need for humanitarian development actions threaten to undermine our ability to achieve our shared sustainable development goals. Without a doubt, the private sector has played an important role in humanitarian preparedness and response. In fact, private sector involvement in humanitarian assistance has changed dramatically in recent years. They are now regarded as corporate partnerships. The private sector is no longer merely a source of goods, services, and philanthropy for society. Society expects more of the private sector, and consequently, its role in addressing challenges that society faces is changing. Among others, its role in responding to disaster and reducing vulnerability is expanding to include a range of different forms of partnerships and involvements, going beyond financial support to skill sharing, long-term partnership, work stream, and staff volunteering. This session will consist of presentations by corporate partners focused on the objective and goals related to preparedness and emergency response and what they expect from the partnership with the Red Cross societies. They will cover key topics such as the role of the private sector in supporting humanitarian organizations and increasing community resilience to natural hazards, as well as discussing the need for visibility and accountability. The presentation will be followed by a panel discussion among corporate partners and our Red Cross colleague. And the session will conclude in a question and answer forum where panelists will have the opportunity to respond to questions posed by both our Red Cross colleague and participants via the chat box. That's important, why you should keep your question in the chat box. If time permits, we will have the opportunity to watch brilliant videos too. Now, I wish to introduce our first speaker, Mr. David Nash, Climate Change and Partnership Senior Manager from Zurich Foundation. With over 15 years in the corporate sector in the UK, David has developed the key business skills necessary to run any organization. Much of his early career was spent in facilitation and people roles, firstly in training and development, moving towards more externally facing roles in partnership and organizational development later on. In 2013, following his successful development Zurich Community Trust India program in India, David returned full-time to Zurich Insurance Group in Switzerland, bringing this partnership skill to the Zurich Flood Resilience Program. This program is a multi-year global initiative aimed at enhancing community resilience to flood. Recently, this has been expanded further with work plan until at least 2024, demonstrating the long-term commitment to enhancing resilience at global level of Zurich. Before I ask you to start your presentation, David, I wish to share a short video highlighting the IDRL program of Zurich, which benefited the Honduran Red Cross. So let's watch that video now, please.
Floods are classified as the most common natural hazard in Latin America and the Caribbean, causing more than 600 disasters in the region within the last 10 years and affecting more than 41 million people. Furthermore, as a result of climate change, these values are projected to increase dramatically. Now we must readjust to the effects, not only of naturally occurring risks, but also to face them in the midst of a global pandemic. Floods are considered to be one of the most costly disasters due to the wide range of damage caused by this phenomenon. With damage ranging from loss of physical assets, ecological and environmental systems, production in all sectors, economic fallout, and issues related to health and loss of life. But how can we accompany communities in the process of becoming more resilient towards the floods? In 2013, Zurich Insurance created a multi-sectoral alliance with funding from the Zurich Foundation for 5 years to support flood-prone communities strengthen their resilience to flood risk.
La visión a largo plazo es que las inundaciones no tienen un impacto negativo en la capacidad de las personas y las empresas en prosperar. Los objetivos son mejorar las prácticas de resiliencia a las inundaciones, aumentando la financiación y fortaleciendo las políticas a nivel nacional e internacional.
Red Cross national societies work to prevent and alleviate human suffering and improve the safety, health, and general well-being of the communities they serve.
Cruz Roja Colombiana puede influir en la toma de decisiones porque hacemos parte de los consejos distritales y departamentales de gestión del riesgo. Y es ahí, a través de sus salas de crisis, donde se toman las acciones y se definen cuál va a ser el actuar de cada organización para la atención a emergencia.
The IFRC's 2030 strategy included climate action among the top priorities for the next 10 years. In line with the IFRC strategy, the Alliance coordinates and works closely with the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center to fully integrate climate change considerations at all levels and directly assist teams from the countries to make their resilience programs climate smart. Floods are classified as the most common natural hazard in Latin America and the Caribbean, causing more than 600 disasters in the region within the last.
Thank you, Mr. Nash, for being here. You may proceed now with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Ariel, and good morning to all on the call today. It's a pleasure to be with you at this particular conference and to open up today's session. I won't be sharing any slides with you, although there are 2 or 3 that I have provided to the production company, and I'm sure they can be shared after the event. As Ariel introduced me, I've been part of the Zurich Flood Resilience work since 2013. When we first launched it, we intended to try to tackle this idea of getting ahead of the disaster curve and looking at how communities could become more resilient to flooding rather than waiting until floods had hit and we have to clean up afterwards. To do that, and in a very complex kind of world, we decided that the best way we could possibly have an impact was to try and bring together partners from across various different sectors, both from the humanitarian and development sector, but also from academia, and also within the private sector itself. Zurich has a wealth of experience in understanding risk, and our understanding of how risk manifests and how you can try and deal with it, when coupled together with a good understanding of what happens on the ground, all wrapped up in an academic understanding, leads us to be able to make innovative choices about how we work together on the ground. We believe, and we started off with a belief, that floods should have no negative impacts on people and businesses' ability to thrive. And in a very uncertain world, that is a situation that is, excuse the pun, quite fluid. It is a ever-changing environment. It constantly moves from one place to another. And one of the ways in which we need to be starting to think more differently about partnerships is about the way in which the partners together can respond to that ever-shifting kind of environment. We started off with a view that was thinking around floods, predominantly for focus. When we think about floods and indeed natural hazards of any description, floods account for more losses than all other hazards combined. It was true back in 2013, and it remains broadly true today, that floods continue to be the largest single hazard that any community will face. And so as a result of that, focusing on one single hazard seemed to be an appropriate way forward. We always have to ask ourselves with resilience, resilience of what, to what, and for whom. It's always about looking directly at the people who we're impacting that we need to be looking at. And building resilience to floods does not mean you build resilience to heat waves or resilience to food security. You need to look at those things through potentially separate lenses. That doesn't mean to say action can't take account of the fact there are multiple hazards, but certainly from a focus point of view, resilience to a hazard is certainly the direction that we went in. Interestingly, and probably underpinning the reason that the partnership that we have works is a commonality of recognizing these fundamental building blocks, recognizing that we need to be looking at resilience before the event to try to avoid and prevent worse outcomes. We need to be looking at this with focus, and we need to be looking at it together in a very complex and fluid kind of way. And it is that common understanding that forms the bedrock of the partnership that we have, not just with the Federation, but with all of the members of the Alliance. If I was to try to sum up where the core elements of a good partnership come from, I would say that having that common understanding as a starting point was essential. I think if I was then to say, where else does it need to go? We need to build in a number of other elements. Key amongst those is trust. We have been in partnership now with the Federation since 2008. That's a 13-year-long journey and counting. Over that period of time, we have learned to understand each other, learned to understand how our different organizations function, learned to understand how to navigate around that difference, and learned to be able to trust that what we can deliver and what the movement can deliver is something that we can rely upon. That trust forms the basis of all of our relationships, and it enables us to put in place the other building blocks that are essential. The second building block, I'd say, is then to think about how long you're going to be working in partnership together. You can deal with certain issues on a short-term basis, but if you're going to try and tackle the systemic challenges that resilience building brings, you need to be thinking about those in the longer term. We committed to a 5-year term in the first place. That's now extended out to at least 11 years and probably counting. Climate change is such a big fundamental topic that will affect the way in which communities behave for generations to come, that we need to be taking that long-term approach. Now, that long-term approach will inevitably come up against a series of change, and the ability to be able to flex and to think about what change means on the ground, is also a key element of what makes this partnership strong. The ability to be able to say, we thought we were going in this direction, but actually we need to tack. We need to change direction slightly. We need to move into a different space. That means we need to be flexible, not only about how we program, but about how budgets are distributed and how we look at the impact that we're having. And that then leads me to another point, which is around the impact. We are focused throughout this entire partnership, not on process, not on the log frame or the work plan, but more on terms of the outcome. It is much more important that we achieve the outcome than we achieve it by following each of the steps of a predefined plan. That flexibility must map into those planning aspects as well. And ultimately, the kind of the test of how all of that works together comes around in the word collaboration. This is very much a partnership of equals. We are sitting hopefully at the same table with the same common objective, looking to try to achieve the same thing together. We bring different things to that table, but all of those things are important. All of those things are valuable. It is not in the interests of us as the corporate sector to hold on to power and direct everything from an ivory tower. Sharing and diffusing that power across the alliance, across all of our partners, helps harness and synergize all of the energies that they can bring. So overall, we achieve more together than we can separately. And on that note, I'll end and hand over to our next panelist. I think I'm handing over to Rhea.
Thank you very much, Nash. Very interesting your presentation and your points. I take with me a couple of learning for myself. One is not the same to build resilience to the different hazards. I mean, you are so right there. And then I take 3 points in relation to partnership. First is a common understanding. Second, trust. Third, long-term approaches. With that, I would like to introduce and to welcome our second speaker today, Mr. Lourdes Tiglao, a Senior Partnership Associate from Airbnb. Lourdes' background cuts sectors across the military, federal, and NGOs, where she currently serves on the partnership team at Airbnb.org. Before joining Airbnb, Lourdes developed her disaster skills with Team Rubicon, a non-profit disaster response organization deploying with the organization during the Hurricane Sandy in New York and Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. She later became Team Rubicon's Global Strategic Partnership Officer, connecting the network with governments and organizations around the world. Prior to Team Rubicon, she served in the US Air Forces as part of the Critical Care Air Transport Team, where she utilized her medical expertise to help save lives in various countries, until she separated with an honorable discharge. She is a staunch veteran advocate, previously serving on the Federal Advisory Board, providing oversight on the department's transformation and the US Department of Veteran Affairs. Ms. Lourdes, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I will be one of those that has a slide presentation, so please bear with me for just a second. Okay. So as Ariel said, my name is Lourdes Tiglao. I am currently Senior Associate for Airbnb.org, and thank you so much for having me here. One of the things that we found with being Airbnb originally and now becoming Airbnb.org as an offshoot organization is, what does Airbnb have to do with disaster response and relief? And I think that this is a question that typically we get originally. And so I wanted to just present to you just the genesis story of Airbnb.org through Shell's story.
Dear Airbnb, I have an idea. Seeing thousands of people have lost their homes to Hurricane Sandy, I want to find a way to help. My apartment is available. I'm wondering if I could list it for free. Where does a movement start? This one started with one host named Shell, one inspiring idea that went and inspired thousands of others to open their homes to strangers who need it most, creating a movement built by you, and you, and you. And where we go from here is everywhere.
So I show this particular video because number one, the origin story of Airbnb.org really kind of came from the community, and I think that one of the things to really take into consideration as we think about partnerships is that it doesn't always have to come the great ideas doesn't have to come from just the corporate organization. It can come from the community, and the corporations and private sector organizations can really respond to the need at the moment. And I think that this is just one example of how a corporation responds to the need and for the moment during that time. So this is just a little quote from our co-founder Joe Gebbia regarding hosts being one of the keys to the way that Airbnb.org had evolved, starting from open homes as a program under Airbnb.com. So the mission of Airbnb.org, for many that might not know, we unlock the power of sharing in space and resources in times of need. Since becoming a separate entity, one of the things that we try to do is not only sharing the space, but also the resource and the finances that we have in times of need. And we offer it to the community, not just with NGOs, but to the local populations that are affected by disasters. We have many different causes that we've supported in the past, which is frontline stays, which is with COVID, refugee housing, and disaster response. It all started with disasters, but as an organization that tries to be at least in touch with the evolving times, we've expanded and grown our program in response to the need of not just the communities, but also the NGOs that we're partnering with. When we're talking about the role of private sector in supporting humanitarian organizations, I think one of the things to really remember is that we can't be married to just the thing that we started with. To remain relevant, we have to make sure that we are also being responsive to our partners and to the communities and the terrain that we're working with. We work with a wide network all along with Airbnb hosts, with evacuees who are displaced, relief workers, government, local communities, NGOs, and IFRC obviously is one of our key partners. So what kind of disasters do we respond to? We respond to both man-made and natural disasters, majority of it being natural disasters, particularly like earthquakes, wildfires, many of it that your organizations are familiar with. The response and reach since starting our program since 2012 have been conducting hundreds of activations coming from 80 plus countries that we've housed people in. And to date, we've housed over 85,000 guests, relief workers, populations that have affected. And the types of responses that we do during disasters for communities are a response specifically providing free accommodations for the populations affected, as well as providing grant allocations with our partner organizations to provide temporary housing, both for the disaster responders as well as the beneficiaries that we serve. With regard to the activations and how we respond, like I said, it's through our disaster tools as well as responding with our NGO organizations. So the goals for our organization, because we're nascent, we started in 2012 as a program within Airbnb.com, but now we are a separate entity. as Airbnb.org, and our goals have evolved over the last few years. Right now, our focus is on regional investment, specifically in our operations, focusing on specific countries and not trying to spread too far and wide. Having localization in our response, particularly partnering with our partner organizations to get more relationships with our local governments and NGO engagements in those particular countries, as well as centering equity in particular into the programs and practices that we conduct. One of the things that we have found that is extremely important is this alignment. And this kind of goes to my next slide, which is really what we value as as a private sector organization. One of the things is the values alignment. With regards to our organization being born from the mission of creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere, as trusted organizations that are responding to the needs of communities in crisis, our credibility hinges on the trust from our stakeholders and communities. And so we want to make sure that we're working with organizations that are trusted partners as well. Currently, we're developing a policy regarding anti-discrimination and misconduct that hopefully will align on how we evaluate our partners. The next one is really a bilateral accountability, holding ourselves and our partners accountable to our conduct to make sure that we maintain our integrity and the trust with the communities. The other thing is really candid feedback from our partners. In order for us to be responsive to our partners and also to the communities that we serve, we have to make sure that we're getting candid feedback, and that comes into play with regards to making sure that the power dynamics is shared versus the typical what happens with private sector organizations. There's this power dynamic where it's like you're the donor and then the grantee. It's always like this top-down approach that's traditionally and historically has happened, and we're trying to focus on making sure that there's equity in that power dynamics and power sharing. And the last thing that we value right now and we're focusing on as an organization is really creating these deep engagements across various activities. And that can mean investment in various engagements regarding communications. Goals co-development is a big thing, and really exploring true bilateral partnership where we leverage each other's expertise in various ways. And I think with that, I will open or close with that, actually, with the values that we have. Stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Lourdes. I am taking with me one question, one answer of your presentation, and a comment that reached me, touched me personally. The first question that I take with me from your presentation is how you started, right? So why Airbnb should be engaged in disaster response or should be involved in this matter? And for me, you provided the answer in your same presentation is because Airbnb needs to remain relevant to all stakeholders and not only to the shareholders. And for me, that's part of the logic of what we are discussing here. And the comment that I take with me is from the founder, right? They say that people open the houses, but they also open the hearts, right? And for me, I mean, that's very much the spirit of the Red Cross. So thank you very much for your presentation. I would like in this way to present our to introduce our third panelist of today, Mr. Joaquín Toro, Lead Disaster Risk Management Specialist at the World Bank. Joaquín Toro is the Regional Coordinator for Disaster Risk Management in Latin America and the Caribbean at the World Bank. He joined the bank in 2003 in the Latin American and Caribbean region and helped setting up disaster risk management teams, not only in Latin America and the Caribbean, but also in Europe and Central Asia. He is part of the founders of Understanding Risk Community and Forums. He has more than 20 years of disaster risk management experience and holds a master's degree in engineering management and systems engineering from George Washington University. Joaquín, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. Can you see my screen I think I'm sharing
Yes,
it.
I can.
Thank you very much. Super. Thank you very much. I think I have only a few minutes, and I will try to run on this. And for me, I want to start by saying that partnership is something that everybody wins, no? And everybody is part of one team. And I think this campaign that we are supporting CEDIMA for the Caribbean is a good example of that. We are facing difficult times, no? And the last year has been very difficult. And one of the challenges we had last year, I mean, with CEDIMA when we were putting together this campaign, is that we had to communicate something positive because the people of the Caribbean were a little bit tired, no? As everybody in the world. But we were facing many things, no? Not only COVID, the hurricanes, floods, volcanic eruptions, and something like things like that. And we were thinking, how can we make sure that we can send a positive message that resonates in the region? And we know that the Caribbean people are very resilient, but they all also love music. They love sports. So we decided to create a team that is going to be the disasters, but a team that is going to be, that everybody will like to be part. So the disaster fighters were created. And the first match, of course, started in June 1st against the Hurricanes. So what we did was really a partnership. We opened the doors to musicians and cricketers. And we created this team that started with these celebrities, but at the end of the day, everybody should be part of it. No, you should be part of this team. We created a whole campaign around mobile devices because we couldn't send crews to all the different islands. So we decided to use the social media format. We created a song and a video, and we'll see that soon. But we are using all these technologies to our favor. No, we created the song with the message that CEDIMA wanted to put out, but it was the artists, the musicians who composed the lyrics of the song. So there is something artistic as well over there. And we are using all the different social media channels to do that. We are also partnering with TikTok, and we are going to create a challenge actually next Monday. We are sending, and the idea is very, very easy. And let me just see if this works. So the challenge is how many makeup plan can you sing in 10 seconds? So not only singing, but making sure that you act, no? We are also partnering with Binance. Binance is the one of the biggest cryptocurrencies exchange of the world, and they are launching their Binance NFT. NFT are these non-fungible tokens. And most of us didn't know about this a few months ago, but there's a huge market that is being developed under these cryptocurrencies. And why not to have that to support emergency preparedness and of course, emergency response. So the idea is that we are going to launch this part of the campaign in July, where we are going to put out some NFTs, these collectibles, but also we are partnering with artists of the NFT world. You might not know, but there's a whole collectible that is generating so much resources with these little drawings, the Yetis, the aliens, the monkeys, the apes, and we are bringing those artists to do derivatives from these designs to help also the creation of this. The idea is to set a system before the hurricanes, the disasters strike, and if there is a disaster in the next months, we will channel all of that for that specific disaster. So I think this partnership, it's not only with private sector, but also with artists that want to collaborate. We launched the campaign on May 31st. The TikTok challenge is going to start next week, and the launch of the NFT campaign will be in July 15. So basically, the partnership has many people, and we want you also to be part of this partnership. And I believe that the campaign is doing quite well. We have lots of media articles. We have created the video in YouTube has around more than I think 500,000 in the last 3 weeks. We have the celebrities sharing it, but I think we are one team, no? And our goal is for you to participate on this. So in this presentation, I'm sure that it is going to be available. We have the song, we have the video, we have the media channels, we have basically the image for you to use it and to participate on this, create the t-shirts, etc. But most important maybe is to share the message. And with that, I would like to share the video with you, so we can be part of this team.
These are the fighters. My Caribbean brothers and sisters, from June 1st straight to November. Prepare now, not after. Prepare now, not later. Don't wait for disaster to shoot off the neighbor. It's hurricane season. Come on.
Hurricanes are coming. Lead we learn from the last one. We may think we are strong, but nature's even stronger. Let's protect what we love.
City state for shelter.
Check up on the latest news.
Disaster fighters. Let's do this together now. Hurricane fighters.
We gon' fight to make it better.
When the hazard's coming, we should tell each other. This is the time for us to prepare together. Look out for your neighbor, make sure the children safe. And with this team training lives, we going to save.
Flashlight, check. Food and water, check. You trim the trees, check on the elderly.
Check your neighbor and your friend them. Wear your mask to protect them. Check the news to inform them. Or else you might end up in a problem. Have faith, prepare, stay safe, don't fear.
Disaster fighters.
Let's do this together now.
Hurricane fighters. We gon' fight to make it better.
The disaster fighters are ready for the hurricane season.
Make a plan, make a plan, make a plan, make a plan, make a plan.
Everybody come together and we make a plan.
Make a plan, 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 make a plan.
Everybody come together and we make a plan. Secure your home.
Make a check.
Feel an emergency kit.
Make a check.
Protect your pets.
Make a check. Everybody
Check the news.
check.
Stay inside.
Make a check.
Away from the windows.
Make a check.
If you need to evacuate, go to the nearest
Disaster fighters.
Let's do this together now.
Hurricane fighters.
Let's do this together. Let's do this together now.
Disaster fighters.
Let's do it together now.
Hurricane fighters.
Let's do this together. Let's do this together now.
We are in this together. We're one team.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. I think that I take with me out of your presentation is, how much you can do with so little across this partnership with all different sectors. With disaster fighters, everyone wins. Thank you very much for that. With this, we move to our next section of this conversation, which is our panel discussion. Due to the growing importance of Red Cross Society's engagement with the private sector and the challenges such partnership opportunities present, the objective of this session is to explore both points of view with the aim of gaining perspectives to inform future negotiations, thereby maximizing the impact of ongoing and future partnership. To this part of this conversation, I would like to introduce two colleagues of mine from the Red Cross. First is Ms. Shil Devor, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Shil is a transformational leader who inspired action. She is a strategic, result-driven, and forward-thinking professional with more than 13 years progressive experience in development, humanitarian, and operational success. A resourceful, innovative and quality-focused professional with a record of impactful organizations, performance and transformation. She holds a master's degree in business with a focus on leadership, innovation and entrepreneurship from Anglia Ruskin University, London. And I would like to introduce my colleague, Saida Chulhak, General Coordinator for the Panamanian Red Cross. Saida, she is also the coordinator of the Social Welfare Program and focal point for the Airbnb.org Open Homes partnership that we have just recently heard about. With both of you in the panel now, we have this wonderful panel of 5 persons. So without further ado, I will kindly ask my colleague Shil. Please, Shil, if you have a question for the panelists, go ahead and ask the question.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to our wonderful panel this morning with such, a thoughtful and inspiring presentation by all. One question any one of the panel members can answer. When common values and objectives are identified, partnerships become a deliberate action. What was the value propositioning of Red Cross that you identified that said this was the right partner of choice for your organization?
I see all of you nodding, so who would like to take the question? Just raise your hand and let me know.
So I'll try and put some kind of bones around why Zurich ended up working with the Red Cross. I think the reality of what we're trying to achieve, we're looking to try and achieve something at a global scale, and because floods happen everywhere. There isn't a place on earth, I don't think, that hasn't experienced floods at some point, and communities everywhere are threatened by that. How do you get to the most communities you can get to? How do you find a way in which you can reach through to the very many people that require that? That for us requires us to be looking at partners that had that kind of reach, that had that kind of embeddedness within their communities, within their societies. And that naturally led us to an organization like the Red Cross, with the Red Cross being everywhere. I think there are only a handful of places on earth which don't have a Red Cross or Red Crescent Society engaged locally. That gives us a huge opportunity of being able to capitalize on the learning from the Red Cross and being able to bring that learning together into what we're looking for, but more importantly, to scale it out and to find ways in which we can really take what we've learned and put it out to many, many people. So size is certainly one factor that brought us to it. The other was experience, and I think that the experience of the Red Cross in connecting and understanding why natural hazards turn into disasters, what is the outcome of the natural hazard, and why they become so difficult to deal with. There's nobody better placed than the Red Cross to understand what the outcome of that looks like. And if what we're trying to do is get ahead of that and help people to be better prepared, reducing their risks, understanding how they can avoid those outcomes, then there's nobody better placed, I think, to understand that. And so it's a natural fit for us to talk with the Red Cross.
Thank you very much, David. Saida, I'm sure you have a question. Let's pose your question to the panelists and see who is going to take it.
Okay, good morning. I will talk in Spanish.
Perfect.
Los efectos del cambio climático, tormentas tropicales, huracanes, la COVID-19 y el aumento del fenómeno migratorio son algunos de los grandes retos actuales y futuros que enfrentan las naciones. Como consecuencia y en relación con este contexto actual, ¿cómo visualiza la alianza de sus empresas con las sociedades nacionales de la Cruz Roja en los próximos 5 años?
Thank you, Saida. I would direct this question either to Joaquin or to Lourdes. Which one of you would like to take it? Joaquin, could you give it a try?
Absolutely. And I think based on what we have seen, climate change is here, no, and it's not a question anymore. So how do we do our day-to-day activities thinking about that? And I think as I was mentioning, hurricanes is just the first match. We will have complex emergencies as we are having last year with hurricanes, floods, volcanic eruptions, COVID, but at the same time, the issues of climate change, you know, sea level rise, more frequent and intense rains, but at the same time, droughts. And I believe that the next steps, and I think that's something that the Red Cross is mentioning, is how we are going to tackle these multi-hazard issues in the future. We are preparing ourselves for certain activities individually, which is the correct, as David mentioned. No, we need to focus on resilience for floods, for example. But at the same time, we know that they are not going to come alone. How do we do that? And I think the partnerships at local level, as I believe that is one of the big competitive advantages that the Red Cross has, is that you are there in each of the countries, in the communities, and that's where we need to start the adaptation for climate change.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. Lourdes, would you like to complement the answer?
I'm so sorry. I actually do not speak Spanish, so I do not.
It wasn't translated. Okay, no worries. Then I will ask my colleague, any of my colleagues from the Red Cross, if there is any other question that we would like to ask panelists. Maybe Chief, will you have another question to the panelists?
So yes, I will just, one more question, perhaps. David, your focus, Zurich's focus is climate change in terms of changing the view. In the Caribbean, most countries are not very conscious of the effects of climate change. What is your suggestion based on your experience and what you've been doing in terms of what is the message from you as a donor on the importance of climate change and why countries in the Caribbean need to take this more seriously?
So yeah, a great question. Actually, I think it points to a wider problem than just in the Caribbean, and that's around communication. We spend a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time in conferences and talking to people, and we talk about things at a level that's 1,000 miles above ordinary people's experience and understanding. And I think one of the ways in which we can try and to get that understanding deeper is to take what is actually happening from a scientific point of view, you know, talking about 100-year floods and 1.5 degrees and all this kind of stuff. I'm thinking outside, it's 16 degrees outside here. I could do with it being 17.5 degrees. That would be lovely. So it's very easy to kind of dismiss what the science is telling us about what that average temperature rise really means. So I think the key way of getting to down to ground level for people to realize that the risk is real and it's now and we need to start taking some action is to translate that into something that really resonates with people. So I mean, for example, we talk about 100-year flood, which actually means that for every year there's a 1% chance of a flood of that magnitude. So it doesn't mean to say that one happened last year, so good, we've got another 99 years before one turns up. There's a 1% chance of it happening every year. And if you think about the kind of the lifetime that you're in a property, that 1% compounds and compounds and compounds. So over a 30 or 40 year period, you may find you're running a risk more like 60% of being hit by one of these things, rather than the 1 in 100 year that you're sheltering behind. So I think trying to translate this risk information into something that is tangible, that's real to people, that can really help to kind of bring home the message about how to change what is really needed in the future to make a difference. I think it all comes down to communication, and communication from credible sources. I thought the disaster fighters stuff, one, apart from being insanely catchy, was such a down-to-earth, connected way of talking to people. It was really great.
Thank you, David. Saida, would you like to pose another question to our panelists?
Sí, el punto de vista sobre las diferencias de donaciones en especies, porque algunos de los donantes hacen donaciones en especies, que cómo ellos pueden visualizar la diferencia de una donación en especie más en efectivo, que en temas de desastres es mucho más fácil el manejo para las sociedades nacionales. Gracias.
Lourdes, I'm very tempted to give the question to you, but I'm not sure whether the interpretation worked this time.
I'm going to...
I am going to interpret the question to you. So the question from my colleague is, you know, normally, and I think it's a very good question for the case of Airbnb, because of the type of partnership that we have set up, and we are working in our collaboration, in our partnership. And the question is, usually when there is an emergency, we from the Red Cross will receive what we categorize in two types of contributions. One we call in-kind contributions, and the other are cash contributions. So the question is, why in some opportunities, or in some cases, some partners prefer the in-kind contribution as opposed to the cash contribution? And given that our partnership is mainly about in-kind contribution, I would like you, if you don't mind, Lourdes, to go ahead and take the answer to this question.
Yeah, of course. Actually, that is kind of a perfect question for me. So in the history of our partnership with IFRC, historically it has been in kind, as in providing lodging through the Airbnb homes whenever a disaster strikes. And now that we've moved away to from being Airbnb.com to Airbnb.org, which is a separate entity, a nonprofit entity, one of the things that we have to be very careful about is providing private benefit. Now, the reason for some organizations, you know, utilizing in-kind vice cash is, number one, it's just, there is this saying, like, you know, do what you do best, partner for the rest, where if what we do best is housing, then that is the best and the most efficient and expedient way we're able to provide a value add to a particular situation. Now, cash, on the other hand, there's a lot of stipulations that gets involved and other, and sometimes when we're providing grants, we have to be very specific about the use case and parameters about that. And then there's the reporting aspect of it. For reporting, it's actually easier for partners to utilize an in-kind grant because it's easier to track. Versus with cash, it's like all these different widgets that you have to report in. So I think for a private sector, one thing I'll say is that we try to offer what our specialty is first, because that just makes sense. And then now, though, that we're moved away to an Airbnb.org nonprofit entity, we're now moving away from that and utilizing cash specifically. In fact, next year is going to be all cash. And so for that one, it's to provide the most flexibility for our partners. And I hope that helps clarify some of that.
It does perfectly well. Thank you very much. As we can hear, the music is starting, so we are about to end this session today. I do not want to end without mentioning that this session has also served maybe to expand our alliance. As I can see in the chat, one of our colleagues from Zurich, ID Zamorano, who is asking from Zurich Foundation team, is asking Lourdes if you can contact her because they would like to share the Food Alliance with you. So I cannot be that, as much happy as I am today. We not only learn a lot about partnership with the private sector, but we also continue cultivating our partnership during this session and potentially, expanding what we are doing together already. So thank you very much, everybody, for participating today. I think it has been a great discussion. We have learned a lot. Thank you very much to you all, my dear panelists today.